Labour are announcing a crackdown on tax dodgers today as they aim to close non-dom tax loopholes. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves will say that the revenue generated will go towards the NHS and schools. Well, joining me right now to discuss this is former advisor to Tony Blair, John McTernan. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Now, I think the vast majority of taxpayers who aren't large party donors to either the Tories or indeed the Labour Party will be quite pleased to have a thought of loopholes for multi-millionaire non-doms being closed, so they actually have to pay tax here because that's where they're living. I don't think most people have an issue with it. The only reason this has had to happen, though, of course, is there was this £2 billion black hole in the spending for schools and hospitals, which Rachel Reeves had in her numbers after Jeremy Hunt stole that money that she was going to use from doing various things to use for a cut in our national insurance, which unfortunately for Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak didn't result in a single minute of bounce in the polls. But is this enough? Is this enough action? Because we know that it's something that makes people very angry. When people go out to work, they work hard, they pay their bills, they pay huge amounts of tax, massively high tax burden at the moment, and they know that the richest people are kind of getting away with paying less than them on lots of things. Is this going to be enough of a crackdown?
Look, I think it's the right thing to do. They say plagiarism of policy is like, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So Jeremy Hunt clearly likes the cut of Labour policies. He didn't fully take them on and gave Rachel Reeves the opportunity to say, no, look, we can be tougher on non-doms than you. We can find £500 million, £700 million a year. And actually, while we're looking at this issue of collecting taxes, there is a thing called the tax gap. There's about, I think it's nearly £55 billion of tax that is owed in the country that's not collected, and driving down on staff numbers in the civil service, particularly in HMRC, has cost the government dearly. I think it's a good idea to invest in collection too. And I think people will like to see, if they're paying a heavier burden of tax, which they are because of the slow growth, the low growth of the economy in the UK since the Tories took over, then they do want to see everybody paying their fair share. So I think it's the right place for Labour to put itself, and it's a good response to the cheekiness of Jeremy Hunt, first slagging off Labour policies, then taking them on wholesale. But if Jeremy Hunt thinks that Labour policies are good, he's going to really enjoy it when there's a Labour government.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people are rather worried, though, in terms of if and when Labour win the next election and get into power, that, a lot of people have a lot of expectations about what Labour will do. Oh, suddenly there'll be all this extra money for all the things that lots of Labour voters care about, like the NHS, like schools and social services and all of this, when actually you and I, and certainly Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, there isn't any money. There isn't any money left at all. Unless they're going to be raising taxes, they're going to have to be doing a lot of cuts if they want to fund other services to a higher amount. I mean, an awful lot of people would think, like, this is probably the worst year, other than perhaps last year, for a Labour government to come into power, because Tony Blair, as you know, you worked for him, he came into office. The economy was booming. There was plenty of money. There was loads of tactics. Money could be. I was working as a journalist in the lobby. Here's an extra, God knows how many billion for the health service. Here it is for schools. Loads of money was spent. Labour aren't going to be able to do any of that if they get in this year. That's going to have a big impact on their support, isn't it? You're going to end up with just in a very few months, a lot of very disappointed voters.
Well, the first 2 years of that Labour government, the Tony Blair, Gordon Brown government, were incredibly tight fiscally because Labour had committed to sticking to the Tory spending plans. As a consequence, and you'll remember this, the biggest revolt ever, I think, in the Labour Party history in Parliament, was over lone parent benefit cuts. I was working for Harriet Harman at the time. We had to make cuts in Social Security. So it wasn't kind of all sunlit uplands when we came in, the Labour government. The growth did in the end deliver. The growth delivered higher expenditure. And in a sense, that's the plan from Labour too. Modest promises now, where every increase in spending is being paid for by a tax. And that's why Rachel carefully went over what we could do with taxation. And I think it's important to say too, that 2/3 of the tax cuts that Jeremy Hunt and the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak go around boasting about, 2/3 of those cuts are paid for by increased borrowing. When Rishi Sunak talk about headroom, they don't mean more tax revenue coming in. They mean that they can do more borrowing so they don't breach their rules. I think Rachel's being really straight with people. The economy has got to be rebuilt before we can spend more. And that's a tough thing to hear, but I think it's better than the fiction that we get from Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak. I think it's dishonest to say to people, your taxes are going up and now we're cutting your taxes because the tax thresholds are being frozen. Therefore, people are feeling more pain.
We talk about on the show most weeks, John. If we believe, we're all in agreement here, are we not, that people should pay the tax they're due and we not exploit loopholes. Do we agree that Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, should pay all the tax she's due when she sells a council house that she's bought on discount?
She did pay her tax.
Well, the trouble is, with capital gains tax, it depends on whether the house you sold is your main property, your home, or another property. And as you know, major question marks have been asked about that.
No, they haven't.
Well, I mean, they have. They're all over the front pages of the papers.
They're not. This is political stuff and nonsense. It's political nonsense from the Tories. It's the kind of attack you'd expect on Labour's greatest campaigner. Angie's an asset. Angela Rayner's an asset to the Labour Party. She's being attacked for that reason. Angela Rayner pays her taxes. Keir Starmer pays his taxes. I pay my taxes. You pay your taxes. We don't have to go and prove we've paid our taxes. We pay our taxes. We're citizens. And it's a nonsense to say that Angela has to prove a negative. People make assertions and then she's got to prove it.
Well, people haven't just made assertions. I mean, we've got quite a lot of evidence that there are some question marks to be raised about this. And again, things like, birth certificate for her children is registered at one home. Her electoral register is registered at another home. The fact that she posted a load of tweets talking about being at home from her husband's home for the first 5 years of their marriage with their kids, and yet claiming to live somewhere else. The neighbours at her husband's home are saying she's a, quote, effing liar to claim she wasn't living there. Now, I don't care where Angela Rayner lived. I've got less than zero interest in what her personal arrangements with her husband are. However, it is taking us voters for fools to claim and to pretend that she was living in the house that she claimed she was living in when she wasn't.
Listen, it's not just you not caring where Angela Rayner lives. It's not just me not caring where Angela Rayner lives. It's the tax authorities who don't care where Angela Rayner lives.
No, there hasn't been a full police investigation.
No,
there hasn't been. The police, Greater Manchester Police were asked to investigate, didn't look at a single bit of evidence, and then said no case to answer. And it was a Tory MP who said, you need to investigate again and actually look at some of the evidence.
No, the issue, your problem, and the problem of the Daily Mail appears to be with the way the HMRC operate. HMRC don't care where your home is. They care what your primary residence is. That's what they care about. And your primary residence doesn't need to be your home, doesn't need to be where you live.
Your primary residence is where you live.
In a certain way. And people are asserting that Angela didn't pay her taxes. She says she has. I believe her. You don't have to prove
and Keir Starmer believes her. He hasn't. She says, John, that she's had legal advice that's advised her that she's not done anything wrong. I don't know whether she has or she hasn't. All I know is that her version of events doesn't add up. And people might not, John, people might not care where Angela Rayner lived or not. They might not even care about whether or not she got out of paying a couple of grand in capital gains tax or not. But you know what they do care about? They care about being lied to. And one of the things we have learned over the years is that voters are very unhappy when people who want to have power over them lie to them and take them for fools. And that is what she is doing right now.
No, that's nonsense. Angela Rayner hasn't lied. And
How
to
do you
accuse
know?
Angela Rayner
How
of
do you
lying,
know she hasn't lied?
You've said Angela Rayner has lied. She hasn't lied. She's paid her tax. And we don't live in we don't live in a police state where a demand has been made, publish your papers, show us everything. It is a situation. She bought a council house. Working class people bought council houses. She sold a council house and made a profit on it. Working class people make profits on council houses they bought every day, and that's a good thing.
Well, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think people should be allowed to buy their council houses, but there we are.
People, the right to buy is a great policy. It's given so many working class people their first home, so many working class people a capital asset that middle class families take for granted. And the idea that the only news in our country is letters being written by the current, it's such a temporary position, isn't it? The current chairman of the Tory party to Keir Starmer. You know, Labour is rightly ignoring. Labour is binning the things that come in from the Tories to them. It's a nonsense. There's so much news in this country, and for us to be talking about this is ridiculous.
Well, again, it seemed, I mean, I felt just as strongly. Nadeem Sahawi, you know, dodging £5 million in tax. I said straight away, he has to go. End of story. Look, you know, people lost their jobs as MPs not too many years ago for claiming expenses for bath plugs in what weren't their second homes. I think the British people have a funny way of deciding what they think is news and what isn't. Really good to talk to you, John McTernan, former advisor to Tony Blair. Thank you for that.